Hi, it's Katrina! From giant castles on the Nile to jewelry made from meteorites, here are 9 little-known discoveries from ancient Egypt. Number 9. Ancient forts on the Nile. The Nile River is one of the things that's truly synonymous with Egypt. It's one of the reasons the Egyptians were able to survive and thrive in the harsh deserts of Africa. The Nile River was the lifeline of the Egyptians and brought fresh water for crops and also was the gateway to the rest of their known world. To the south of the Egyptians were the Nubians and Kush, which is now Ethiopia and Sudan. The Kushites, or the Nubians, had a hostile relationship with the Middle Kingdom of Egypt, and so the pharaohs built enormous castles and fortresses all along the Nile. Egypt had a complicated relationship with their neighbors to the south because they also depended on them to bring in goods, and these forts and castles also became large centers of commerce. These forts were so huge that they could house thousands of soldiers at one time, along with countless merchants, travelers, and anyone else who was traveling and trading on the river. They also needed a place to store their gold and riches as they made their way back to the capital. These castles and fortifications became settlements, and some even had drawbridges that would allow people to cross the Nile River if they got permission. Other forts were strictly for defense, as the Egyptian Empire had enemies on all sides at times, including the Hittites, which came from the north. The Egyptians were actually invaded a lot throughout history. The Buhen Fortress, for example, was located in what is now northern Sudan. The walls of the fortress were 5 meters thick and about 10 meters high, covering an area of 13,000 square meters. It was built to protect Egypt and the commercial ships filled with valuable gold, ivory, gemstones, materials, woods, wheat, you name it, from pirates and rebels. Some of these forts are still being discovered to this day, but sadly many have been lost forever due to flooding. To be fair, they were around a long time. Number 8. Napoleon Bonaparte's weapons. Napoleon Bonaparte is revered as one of the greatest conquerors of all time. The French military leader was fascinated with Egypt, and during the end of the 18th century he led a military expedition to Egypt to protect French trade interests and annoy the British. He took over 100 warships and 40,000 men, and on his way to march toward Cairo, one of the French campaign ships sunk, entering Alexandria's West Harbor. The British were there, waiting for Napoleon, and they had to battle it out. Turns out, in 2014, Russian divers found hundreds of French weapons off of Pharos Island. Pharos Island is believed to have over 5,000 artifacts and remains. It used to be home to the Lighthouse of Alexandria, which was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. While the ship battle was documented, no one knew where the French ship had sunk until 1998. These underwater weapons were sent to the Grand Egyptian Museum to start restoration work on them. The divers and academics were very excited to go on more underwater expeditions to see what else they can find. And now for a lost pyramid. But first, if you are new here, be sure to subscribe and join the notification squad. We'd love to have you! Number 7. Lost and found. When it comes to Egypt and their monuments and legacy, the biggest one that people think of are the Grand Pyramids. The Pyramids of Giza are revered as one of the 7 wonders of the world, but that's not to say that there aren't many more pyramids out there buried in the sands. In fact, researchers speculate that there could be many more out there, but the harsh desert climate has hidden them over time. However, a pyramid was discovered very recently. Archaeologists found what they thought to be just another old tomb buried in the ground. Turns out it was the lower chambers of a much larger pyramid, but the rest of it was gone. Just last year in 2017, the discovery was looked at again with new eyes, and it was discovered to be a pyramid that was actually built around 3,700 years ago, which makes it one of the newest pyramids ever made. I say newest very loosely. Though its significance has been determined to an extent, it's still unclear who is buried in the pyramid. More than likely, it's a high-ranking person from the 13th dynasty, but there are no definitive clues yet. These things are always ongoing, and now with all the new technology that we have, it is much easier to find ancient ruins that are hidden by the sand. Number 6. 1,000 statues. One of the reasons why the archaeological excavation of Egyptian tombs and pyramids is so exciting is that because of all the beliefs and historical influences over thousands of years, you never know just who or what you're going to find in each tomb. A great example of this is what happened with a tomb that was found recently on the west side of the Nile River. The tomb was discovered in 2017 and was dated to be over 3,000 years old. It was the resting place of a nobleman who lived there at the time. His name was Named Usarhat, and he was apparently a well-respected judge in the Egyptian Empire during the New Kingdom era. But besides all that, it wasn't just his body in there. There were numerous other sarcophagi with him, likely belonging to his family. But even more intriguing was that there was a hidden room found in the tomb, which was huge. In this room, there were 1,000 very tiny statues. Statues of what? Well, apparently they're of important figures in Egypt's history, including some of the past pharaohs. Bonus for archaeologists and historians. This judge might have really liked history too. As if this weren't enough, many expect more to be found as the tomb continues to be excavated. It makes you wonder, why were these statues made? Did he make a special request before he died? Why were they placed in the tomb like they were? Who knows if we will ever know. Number 5. Newly found necropolis. A necropolis is usually an ancient, large burial ground, and it's a place that's revered in Egyptian culture. The bodies of respected and royal individuals were placed in the necropolis, and sometimes common citizens as well. And each one that is found sheds new light on Egyptian history. A necropolis was found in 2016 that completely changed our knowledge of the area. It was found in Gebel El Silsila, which many thought was just a simple quarry area. But this necropolis proved to be just the opposite. The necropolis not only had a shrine, but 42 tombs. You can't have that without a group of people to build them and then fill them up. This means that Gebel El Silsila was once a thriving community. But here's the twist. No signs of any community or town have been found in that area outside the necropolis. So what happened to those people? They just disappeared in time, and we know nothing about them. Number 4. What came before? It's very easy to focus on ancient civilizations like the ancient Greeks, Romans, and Egyptians and learn all about them. But for some, the bigger question is, what came before them? This goes especially for Egypt, as there have been documented tribes who lived before the rise of the Egyptians, but not much is known about them. So when an ancient piece of art was found in Egypt that predated the pharaohs themselves, it was a big deal. The art piece itself was found near a necropolis in Aswan in 2015, and while this piece may not look impressive, many feel it's a missing link between the people before the pharaohs and the ones who eventually formed the empire. The art itself is also unique, for this design was carved into the stone, and the art isn't connective. Instead, it's a series of dots that form a picture when viewed the right way. The picture shows a dancer of some kind and a hunter going after an ostrich, as far as we can tell. The dancer portion is most significant, for it appears that she's wearing a bird mask. Archaeologists date this art piece back to the 4th millennium BC, to the previous people who also made bird masks. If more of these pieces are found, it could be the key to unlocking the mysteries of the time before the Egyptian Empire. Number 3. Iron meteors. You don't need me to tell you that jewelry has always been important to humans, and the ancient Egyptians were no exception. As such, having rare materials to make the jewelry was always a plus. Forget lapis and diamonds. In Egypt, it was discovered that certain pieces of jewelry were actually made from meteor fragments. This was discovered when a burial ground in Guernsey was examined and 9 beads were taken for analysis. Scientists were surprised to find that they were made of these meteor fragments, which must have had enormous religious and spiritual significance. They were traced back to 3200 BC, and as such, they are actually the oldest iron artifacts in the world. This metal from the stars would be collected by the Egyptians, who would then make it into jewelry. They would mold the metal into the forms that they wanted, and would actually flatten it and then shape it into beads and other figures. The 9 beads that were found in the tomb were on a necklace and a waistband. The tomb itself was garnished in very elegant and lucrative terms, leading the people who found it to note that those belonged to a very high-class individual who had really cool stuff. Number 2. The Third Kingdom. If history has taught us anything, it's that it's always changing. What we think we know about the past can be changed in an instant by a finding or by examining something with a new perspective. This has happened many times in Egypt, including the discovery of the Rosetta Stone, but a more recent find has helped change the narrative of how Egypt was unified. For years, scientists debated how many kingdoms were a part of Egypt's earliest years before they came together to form the empire we know now. In 1902, a series of tombs were discovered by a legendary Egyptologist named Flinders Petrie, but for some reason he chose not to examine them himself and left them alone. He was probably afraid of the curse. I'm just kidding. Fast forward 112 years, and some archaeologists decided to take up the charge and go back to his discoveries. And what they found was a king, one from the Third Kingdom of Egypt dating back 3,600 years. His name was King Senebkai, and he ruled a central part of Egypt before it was unified. This was long speculated to be the case, but no one could ever prove that it had happened. These tombs proved the Third Kingdom was real, and history was rewritten once again. Number 1. The Cairo Manuscript. Another truth about history is that not everything makes it out unscathed, and sometimes it takes years or centuries for an artifact's true worth to be found and documented. This is what happened with the Cairo Manuscript. This manuscript was full of religious and spiritual spells and images, but nobody knew that or cared when it was first discovered. Despite its great importance now, how it actually came to be is still a mystery. Just as big a mystery is how it got around the world before being brought back to where it belonged. It was purchased after World War I by the French Institute for Oriental Archaeology, and then by World War II it was given to the Cairo Museum, where it laid in a storage room forgotten. But in 2015, someone took notice of it and then carefully began to reconstruct it from top to bottom. Once that was done, the people of the museum were shocked to find a manuscript full of religious spells. These images actually depicted supernatural beings and gods in a detailed way, which made it all the more special. As further examinations were done, it was revealed that the Cairo manuscript is actually the oldest leather item to have come from Egypt. Many speculate it was made between 2300 to 2000 BC. This means that it actually predates the Book of the Dead. Also within its pages is a guide to a sacred area said to be guarded by mythological beasts. Bet they wish that it examined this sometime sooner. Thanks for watching! I hope you enjoyed learning about these discoveries. Be sure to subscribe and I'll see you next time. Bye!